of children's future success. Class participation. A lot of times, even the well-meaning teachers did stupid things. Sarah is a person that, again, was a refugee after the Second World War, and she had a very diverse background, but she had most immediately come from Romania, which is not one of those backgrounds. But on her records it said from Romania. So her teacher very proudly played Romanian folk songs in school and was outraged that she wasn't very grateful that her background had been appreciated. And other students complained frequently that they were ridiculed by teachers and students in the classes for not identifying as they were supposed to. Anita was a Mexican and Puerto Rican background person, and she was quite dark-skinned, and she bitterly described a situation that occurred in college, where I would think the instructors might know better, and one of the students constantly in the lecture attacked her when they asked for all the black students to stand up, and she didn't stand up. And this woman kept saying, there's somebody here who isn't recognizing what she really is. The teacher never stopped and said, do you think maybe we should give her a chance to explain why she doesn't say she's black? No, that was not something that they did. Adam was a little boy in kindergarten. He was part black and part Caucasian. And he had the misfortune of making friends on the playground with a little white girl. And she liked him, and she said, I want you to meet my parents. And when parents came to pick her up, she introduced him, and they snatched her away and took her in the car. And the next time she went to school, she said, I can't be friends with you anymore because my parents don't like you. And he said, that's when I know. That's when I knew I was black. At 5. Schools are not very nice, and it's not always the kids that do the harassing and the bullying. Sometimes it's the teachers. This extended way outside. Deanna was a black and Korean respondent who was born in Korea, and her father was an African-American GI. And she worked in a Korean establishment, and black customers would come in and tell her, girl, you're black. You can't claim to be Korean. You've got to claim to be black, even though she was born in Korea and spoke Korean. Karen was Asian and white, and this is an interesting story. She also had a brother who was really not her blood brother. He was a cousin who'd been adopted by her Asian and Caucasian parents when his parents could no longer take care of him. And one day when he was about 6 or 7 years old, he was defending his Asian family in the community against the bullying they were experiencing. And they said to him, you're not Asian, you're white. Remember what I said at the beginning about it's not just who I am, but who we are? This was his family, and all of a sudden, not only are they telling him he's not Asian, but he doesn't belong to his family. Again, bullying is not a new experience. Families themselves. These are all examples of a Puerto Rican and Mexican woman, a Korean and Chinese woman, and a Filipino and Caucasian woman, all of whom talking about family situations in which there was a lot of, it's your fault. I remember in particular, Evelyn talked about the fact that her mother's family was constantly saying, it's the Chinese coming out, and the other side saying, it's the Korean part coming out. I've been told I've got to go quickly, so I'm going to skip a couple of things, because I really want to get to some of the kinds of things that I think people could respond to. There are ways that our schools could be better. We could be more accepting of the students' participation. We could monitor what students do to each other so that they do not bully. We could monitor kids' activities on the playground so that there's no bullying on the playground. And I really think we need to have an impact on the broader society. There were two guest chapters in my book, one by Arifa Javed, who talked about a study that she did on or that she has actually carried out. She does parallel socialization conferences with immigrant parents, in which she has parents in one group, the immigrant kids in another group, and the teachers in another. And she helps them to develop communication with each other so that parents understand what the kids are going through, kids understand what the parents want from them, and the teachers understand both. What's different from for her conferences is that they don't just talk to the teachers and say, do this, but they let everybody talk to each other through her. The other one was a study, which one of our PhD students did, of an Edison School program, which unfortunately didn't last very long, in which they emphasized diversity. They wanted to show that we could have a diversity-focused program in a school. It was a middle school and high school. And one of the things they made a point of was that we do not have specific weeks. Like, we don't have Black's History Month. We don't have Cinco de Mayo. We have diversity as an emphasis, so that we are constantly, day by day, bringing in all different aspects of diversity so that children in school begin to learn about all of the diverse dimensions of our society and its culture. They wanted to make sure that the students didn't have all the Black students in this section and all the white students over here and the Asian students, that they tried to get the students to get to know each other instead of being separated. Students liked it, administrators liked it, teachers liked it. Guess what happened to both of these programs? They were canceled relatively early because, after all, it was a frill and we don't really need that kind of stuff here. We want to spend our money on other things. And of course, one of the things was No Child Left Behind came into play. Okay, what's my summary? Bill Doan plays a role in multiculturalism, or can. We need to bring our groups together. We need to have an appreciation for the diversity of our culture. And schools have to deal with these negative experiences. It's not just gay kids. I feel badly for gay kids. Yes, that we should do something about the bullying they experience. They aren't the only ones, and just like the Edison School said, we aren't just going to focus on this group's problems, but all kids' problems, and all of the cultural divisions in our society. Schools can do a lot if they put some time and effort and money into it to improve and make our multicultural society better. Unfortunately, it's not a politically popular thing to do. Thank you.
I very much appreciated your remark about No Child Left Behind. It brought me back to your comment about universalism and literacy, notions of literacy. What was so unfortunate about that, in addition to the way you described No Child Left Behind, is how punitive it was and how non-holistic it was. Punitive.
Yes,
it became, as you were pointing out, having to go to one particular standard, and the lack of a holistic perspective and the imposition of a sort of universalist standard. And it's all the more wonderful to have you here as a sociologist, because that No Child Left Behind flew in the face of research on literacy, which got away from the literacy myth that had prevailed for so long and gave us a much richer understanding of what literacy means in a social community and its diversity as a concept. The same problems occurred in assessment models,
Yes.
which impose a regime that is not developmental, that flies in the face of building in that regard too. So
it's all, it's rule-based. These are the rules, you gotta follow them, and there's no growth. Yes?
Yeah, I'm going to stand up because most of the folks are in back of me. I have both a comment and a question.
Okay.
I grew up in New York City, in the Bronx. My parents were Holocaust survivors. I was born in 1945. You interviewed people who were
Yes, I
in
did.
their 40s. And for the first 5 years of my life, I spoke only German. Now, there was a huge prejudice against German and also against, in many cases, German Jews, because when we talk about blaming the victim, German Jews were blamed often for not having left Germany in a timely manner. And others as well, but German Jews in particular. And I was teased. I wouldn't say I was bullied, but I was certainly teased, and I was not a happy camper in those early years, and also when I started school. However, my mother, I endured this for about 2 years, and then my mother went to school when I was in 2nd grade and talked to my 2nd grade teacher, and because I had wanted to stop speaking German altogether because it was so painful, so difficult. And I also spoke English with a German accent, I should say that. I never had a New York accent because I spoke English with a German accent. Anyway, so my mother went to school, and she talked to my teacher, 2nd grade teacher, who convinced me to continue speaking German because this was a good thing to do, to know more than one language, and especially a non-English language. And so my question to you is, and so that was a good experience.
I was just going to say that was
a good
an unusual teacher for that era.
Exactly, exactly, and that's why I wanted to mention it. My question is, did you also interview people who were children during that time period whose parents were Holocaust survivors and who had that special problem?
I don't recall that any of them were Holocaust survivors, but there were some Jewish respondents from that era, and religion was one of the issues that they brought up. And I mean, I didn't get anybody that was like that actually had a Holocaust background. But the one I mentioned, Sarah, could have been a Holocaust survivor. I mean, they got out. They weren't actually in a concentration camp, but they were refugees from the Nazi horrors. Yes.
I appreciate your presentation because it sort of put that into perspective for me.
Thank you. Yes.
It seems we don't